When people talk about gang wars in Los Angeles, they usually think East L.A., but some of the bloodiest battles were born deep in South Central. Two names stood above the chaos: Playboys 13 and Florencia 13. What started as street pride turned into a violent rivalry that stretched across blocks, families, and generations. Drive-bys, territory lines, silent codes, and revenge moves made these crews feared across the city. And once the war started, there was no such thing as neutral ground. When most people in the U.S. think about Hispanic gangs, their mind instantly goes to East L.A., San Fernando Valley, San Gabriel Valley, Boyle Heights, or downtown L.A. That's the usual picture. But the real story got a twist to it because a big part of Hispanic gang history actually went down deep in South Central Los Angeles. One of the most legendary crews, the 38th Street Gang, didn't come from some far-off barrio. They came straight out of an area policed by LAPD's Newton Division, right in South Central. They were tied to major moments like the Sleepy Lagoon case and the Zoot Suit riots back in 1943. And even though South Central later became known mostly for black gangs, it was never just one thing. There were always small Latino pockets tucked inside those bigger black neighborhoods, surviving, building, and holding ground. Before World War II popped off, a lot of Mexican and Latino workers were grinding hard on the railroads and the famous Red Line streetcars. These were the dudes laying tracks that connected central LA to San Pedro and Long Beach. Hard labor, long days, but real backbone work. A lot of them settled together in one part of South Central and called it Colonia Watts, or the Watts Colony. That spot wasn't just housing, it was community. Spanish-speaking stores, small markets, and familiar faces everywhere. After the war, street groups started popping up, and most of them took their name straight from that colony or the streets they grew up on. That area became the blueprint. Out of that same soil came the Florence Gang in the late 1940s. They were born in the Florence district of South Central, named after Florence Boulevard, a main strip that runs all the way toward Downey and the 605. That neighborhood was mostly black, but a small Latino group carved out space in the low-income housing projects. They weren't welcome. They had to fight just to exist. That pressure made them hard early. That's how Florencia was built, off survival, pride, and constant conflict. They even turned their name into a symbol. Florence in Spanish is Florencia, and since it sounded like a girl's name, they claimed an old doo-wop song called Florence by the Paragons. Members would call famous radio DJs and request it, using the song like a siren. When it played, it was a message. Florencia was outside. At weddings, quinceañeras, baptisms, or dances, that song was normal, until too many Florence members walked in. Then it became a warning bell, and fights usually followed. By the 1960s, Florence 13 was already a serious force. They weren't moving alone either. They had beef with almost everybody: Compton Barrio Tres, Tortilla Flats, Hickory Street, Grape Street, Elm Street, Watts Jardine, Linwood Paragons, Ochentas, and Colonia Watts. They even clashed with crews from East and Central LA like White Fence. And on top of that, they were constantly at war with surrounding black gangs. It was nonstop pressure on all sides. The 13 in their name wasn't originally about the Mexican mafia like police love to say. It stood for the 13th letter of the alphabet, M, for Mota Marijuana. Back then, kids used weed as a symbol of being wild, loco, untamed. That's why so many Latino gangs added 13 or locos to their names. This was happening before the Mexican mafia even existed. Ironically, though, a lot of the early Mexican mafia members were recruited straight out of Florencia. These South Central Latino gangs had already been fighting black gangs for years, often outnumbered. That reputation for being ruthless made them valuable inside the prison system when racial wars started breaking out. Florencia 13 grew into major drug players. Even in a city flooded with dope, they managed to sit near the top of the food chain. They built relationships with big-time black drug distributors and even dealt directly with Colombian and Mexican cartel networks. This wasn't street corner hustling. This was organized, structured, and cold. Today, they're still growing and still powerful. Florencia 13 is considered one of the three biggest gangs in all of Los Angeles, alongside 18th Street and MS 13. A large portion of their membership now comes from undocumented immigrant communities. Their main money still comes from drug trafficking, but fake document and ID operations bring in major cash too. That's been a gold mine for all the big Hispanic gangs. Right now, Florencia 13 moves under the influence of the Mexican mafia. They tax drug dealers, run fake document mills, and stay locked in violent street wars. They've continued their long-standing attacks against black rivals and are currently in active conflict with the 38th Street Gang and the Playboys 13. Now, the East Side Playboys 13, also known as the Conejos or the Rabbit Gang, came up as one of those street crews that didn't just appear overnight. They were mainly Mexican-American, but their story started way before the streets turned deadly. Back in the mid-1950s, they weren't a gang at all. They were just a car club posted up around Pico Boulevard and Fedora Street, calling themselves the Southern California Latin Playboys Car Club. It was all about rides, style, and neighborhood pride back then. By the late 1970s, everything shifted. They locked in on the eastern side of South Los Santos, running territory from Jamestown Street down to Roy Lowenstein Boulevard and across to 35th Street. That's when the car club turned into a full-blown street gang, and they split into different cliques. The oldest and most respected were the Malos, known as MLS, meaning bad. Then came Chicos Locos, CLS, Bunny Gangsters, BGS, Dukes, DKS, and the all-female Crystal Bunnies, CBS. Each clique had its own energy, but they all moved under the same Playboy's name. In the early 1970s, some of those original Malos drifted into South Central Los Angeles, and that move sparked the East Side Playboys 49th Street clique. By the 1980s, more members left the East Side and spread into Bell Gardens and Southgate, where they built what became the South Side Playboys, also known as Enanos. From there, they kept expanding, pushing into places like Burbank, North Hollywood, and cities across the San Fernando Valley. Orange County got its own chapter in the 1990s when Playboys from Pico and Fedora crossed paths with a party crew out in Garden Grove. That mix created the Orange County Playboys, especially strong in Santa Ana and Garden Grove. The Silvas family played a big role early on, treating it more like family business at first, hanging out, fighting rivals, and building their name. Some people believe the Santa Ana crew came from two gangs merging, but that was never fully proven. Even with constant pressure from law enforcement, the OC Playboys grew to around 360 active members and built a serious reputation in the streets and behind prison walls. The West Side Playboys never disappeared either. They stayed active around West Los Angeles, even with gang injunctions aimed straight at them. Their heart remained near Pico and Fedora in the Olympic Division, but their reach stretched into the Antelope Valley in cities like Burbank, North Hollywood, Palmdale, Canoga Park, and Lancaster. Meanwhile, Southside Playboys stretched even further, setting up in Ensenada, Eugene, Portland, Omaha, and Tacoma. East Side Playboys mostly stayed close to their roots, with Fresno being one of their main outside strongholds. The way they moved was cold and calculated. A lot of members didn't even rock with other low-income neighborhoods, even ones that looked just like their own. Beef popped off constantly over money, drugs, and street control. They stayed tied in with the Serenos and the Mexican Mafia, but weirdly enough, they beefed with almost every other Southern gang out there. Alliances were tight and limited, mainly with the Mexican Mafia, Carnales 13, and the Wild Boys. The older members played their part in shaping the younger generation, making street life, drugs, and violence look flashy and worth it. That grooming turned the newer generation into something way more reckless and violent than the ones before them. It didn't take much to spark war. Disrespect online, small threats, or someone stepping out of line could lead to daylight shootings and straight chaos. Even with their numbers and name, they stayed outmatched. They've been locked in long, bloody wars with heavy hitters like 18th Street, 38th Street, and Florencia 13. And the war with Florencia 13. That wasn't just beef. That was nonstop back and forth shootings that turned whole blocks into war zones. On June 11th, 2007, the streets of South Central were already hot. Reyes wasn't just some bystander. He was an active Florencia 13 member, moving with purpose. That night, he walked into an alley just east of Avalon between 54th and 55th, deep inside what everyone knew was Playboy's territory. That's where Pablo Hernandez lost his life. The crazy part? Pablo wasn't even a Playboys member. He just looked like his brother who was wrong place, wrong face, at the worst possible time. Reyes pulled that trigger to boost his gang's name, plain and simple. Fast forward a week later to June 18th, 2007, and the city was still tense. Armando Barragan was just a regular working man trying to get home. He rolled down Morgan Avenue and spotted a blue sedan double parked, blocking the lane. Some people were standing on the sidewalk, talking to the folks inside the car. Barragan had to swing around it just to get through. That's when it went left. As soon as he passed the car, he heard popping sounds. At first, he brushed it off, thinking it was just firecrackers. But when he checked his rearview mirror and looked back over his shoulder, reality hit. He saw a man hanging out of the blue car's window, firing a gun at the two dudes on the sidewalk. He could even see the smoke floating from the barrel. The blue sedan sped past him, but Barragan stayed sharp. He followed it just long enough to lock in the license plate number, then ran straight to a neighbor and passed that info along. That car turned out to be a blue 1995 Buick Regal, and it was registered to Lopez's father, Jose. Cops also noticed the engine was still hot when they found it, meaning it had just been in motion. The two men on the sidewalk were Freddy Castro and Frank Mariscal. Castro didn't make it. He died there after being hit multiple times. Mariscal got hit 5 times, but somehow survived. Barragan later told police that Ruiz was driving and Lopez was in the passenger seat. The problem was most of what he saw came through a rearview mirror. Detective Johnny Villa dug deeper and believed Barragan had the seats flipped. Villa believed Lopez was actually driving and Ruiz was in the front passenger seat. Mariscal gave detectives one key detail before everything fell apart. He said someone inside the car yelled, "What's that 38th Street life like?" right before the shots went off. He was also very firm when he pointed out the Buick in the photos. No hesitation, no confusion, but fear changed everything. Mariscal started dodging court. He ignored subpoenas and had to be arrested just to get him in front of a judge. At a special hearing, detectives testified that he straight up admitted he was scared and wanted nothing to do with the case. The court locked him in as a must-testify witness. Even his wife told detectives he was terrified and didn't want to testify against the shooter. When he finally sat in front of the jury, though, he acted brand new, said he didn't remember anything, claimed he never told police a single detail. Then the pressure shifted to Lopez. When detectives questioned him, he tried to keep it street. He told them he wasn't trying to rat. He talked about some other guys arguing over who was going to go slide around and look for trouble. He admitted he rolled out with 2 dudes he called Snaps and Straps. In his words, they just hopped in the car and went over there. When asked whose hood hung out around 40th and Morgan, Lopez answered straight up, 38. He broke down the ride. He said he was driving, Straps was in the front passenger seat, and Snaps was sitting in the back. Strange part? He claimed he didn't even know Snaps' real name, even though they'd known each other since junior high. He said they drove around and saw 2 guys on the sidewalk flashing gang signs. The car slowed down. Then Snaps, from the back seat, called out, "What's that 38th Street life?" When detectives asked who started shooting, Lopez said it was the guy in the back, Snaps, and also mentioned Straps. When asked if anyone got hit, Lopez said he didn't see it. He said he drove off afterward and that Straps was the one who parked the car later, but detectives weren't buying all of it. They told Lopez they knew Snaps was in the back, but they accused him of lying about who was sitting up front. They told him Bandit's fingerprints were all over the car. That's when Detective Benavides stepped in and told Lopez straight up that the real front passenger was Ruiz. That's when Lopez's story started shifting. He admitted that earlier that day, around 6 p.m., Ruiz went riding with him in the Buick to go put in work with the Hangout Boys. He admitted he was heated because 38th Street had shot one of his friends and killed another the week before. He also admitted that another friend, Little Laffy, drove him and Ruiz to Mike's Tires on Martin Luther King, and he was armed that day. But when it came to the later shooting ride into 38th Street turf, Lopez locked up. He said he'd die for Ruiz. He said he'd never say Ruiz was in that car because if he did, he'd get stabbed in jail. He had no problem blaming Snaps, though, calling him a punk who wasn't even locked up. When Detective Miguel Terrazas interviewed Lopez, Lopez opened up more. He admitted straight up that Florencia 13 and the Playboys were real enemies. No friendly politics, no passes. If they caught a Playboy while riding with their own crew, they would hit him up without hesitation. He also knew exactly where the Playboys kicked it, around 55th and Avalon. Then came the science. For the Hernandez killing, investigators recovered 8.40 caliber casings and 3 bullets. For the Castro shooting, they collected 7 more .40 caliber casings. When the firearms examiner finished the lab work, It told the real story. Every single casing and every bullet from both crime scenes were fired from the exact same gun. Same weapon, two different attacks, one connected story. By the time this case hit the courtroom, the streets had already told most of the story, but now it was time for 12 people in a jury box to decide what was real and what was smoke. Lopez and Ruiz were tried side by side, and Lopez actually took the stand to save himself. He painted a picture that sounded calm, almost innocent. He told the jury that on June 18, 2007, two guys called Snaps and Straps pulled up to his house. According to him, they said they wanted to go look for some action, but in his mind, that just meant tagging walls or maybe cruising around looking for girls. He said they were new members of Florencia 13 and mostly known for graffiti, not violence. They all jumped into Lopez's father's car. Lopez said he was driving. Straps sat in the front passenger seat, and Snaps sat in the back. He admitted he'd seen them with guns before, but swore he didn't know if they had one that night. No talk about shootings, no plans for violence, nothing like that. As they rolled down Morgan Avenue, Lopez said Straps told him to stop. Straps started yelling out of the window, and Lopez assumed maybe he recognized someone. Then, out of nowhere, Lopez claimed the two guys started arguing with the people outside and suddenly started shooting. Lopez told the jury he was shocked, yelling at them, asking what they were doing while he smashed the gas and sped off. He swore he had no idea a shooting was about to happen, but the courtroom got real quiet when his own words came back to haunt him. Lopez had to admit that what he told the police didn't match what he told the jury. He said when Detective Villa first questioned him, he tried to tell the truth, but Villa accused him of lying and making up crazy stories. Lopez claimed he felt pressured, so he started saying whatever he thought detectives wanted to hear. That right there made the jury uneasy, because when someone changes their story that much, it's hard to know when they're telling the truth. Another uncomfortable detail came out too. At the very start of Lopez's police interview, Detective Villa had mentioned possibly arresting Lopez's father and brother. That planted a seed of fear in Lopez's mind from the jump. Some smaller details came up as well. Lawyers agreed Lopez was left-handed. Ruiz's mother testified too. She confirmed Ruiz and Lopez were close friends. She also said Ruiz couldn't drive, didn't have a license, and was left-handed. Then the rebuttal came in hard through Detective Johnny Villa. He told the jury that Florencia 13 and 38th Street were deadly enemies, not rivals, not beefing on and off, real enemies. In his eyes, there was no chance that Florencia 13 members would casually drive into 38th Street territory just to look for girls. That would have been walking straight into a death trap. Villa also blew holes in Lopez's Snaps and Straps story. He checked gang records and found no Florencia 13 member named Straps. There were two people nicknamed Snaps, but one of them was already locked up when the shootings happened, and the other was a 14-year-old kid whose gang ID wasn't even active yet. He also pointed out that it made no sense for members from different parts of the city to team up like Lopez claimed. Then Villa broke down the mechanics of the shooting. He admitted he was left-handed, but explained he shot guns with his right hand because most firearms are built for right-handed shooters. Plus, firing from a passenger window is way more natural with the right hand, not the left. He also talked about the street layout. The address where the shooting happened was on the west side of Morgan. A car driving southbound would have the passenger closest to the sidewalk, not the driver. That meant the shooter most likely came from the passenger seat. Next came gang expert officer Gilberto Rendon, and his testimony hit heavy. He told the jury Lopez was a confirmed Florencia 13 member. Lopez had admitted he wanted to put in work, which meant committing violence for the gang. Lopez also admitted he knew 40th and Morgan was 38th Street territory. On top of that, Lopez had a Florencia 13 tattoo on his chest, and the cross on the F was shaped like a gun. Rendon explained that symbol meant the gang was armed, ready, and known for using firearms. It also suggested Lopez himself was known to carry a gun. Rendon confirmed Ruiz was also Florencia 13. He explained the gang politics clearly. Florencia 13, 38th Street, and the Hangout Boys hated each other. There was no such thing as accidentally driving into enemy turf. Drivers knew who was armed in their car, and when armed gang members rolled through rival territory, shootings were expected if the opportunity showed up. He even walked the jury through a hypothetical that looked exactly like this case. Three Florencia 13 members drive to Morgan Avenue, slow down, someone yells about 38th Street, and passengers open fire. He made it clear that kind of act would be done to benefit the gang. He also stated he had never heard of Florencia 13 members named Straps, Snaps, or Little Laffy, and confirmed that Castro was not a member of 38th Street. Finally, the verdict came down. On January 29, 2009, the jury found Lopez guilty of first-degree murder for the killing of Freddy Castro. They also found him guilty of the attempted murder of Frank Mariscal. The jury confirmed the shooting was done on purpose, planned, and deliberate. They also confirmed the gun and gang enhancements were true. Lopez was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole, plus 75 years to life. Reyes was hit even harder. He got life with the possibility of parole, plus 125 years to life. Later on, another court reviewed Lopez's case and upheld the conviction, locking it in for good. But that verdict wasn't the end of the violence. It was just the calm before another storm. It was the afternoon of April 1st, 2016. No jokes, no games. This was real street chaos. On 39th Street, three people were just standing around. Nelson Belterton, a 14-year-old kid known as Oscar M., and a woman named Inika Trap. The air was regular for the hood, but danger was closer than anyone thought. Nelson and Oscar weren't just random faces. They were tied in with a street crew called Addicted to Crime, better known as ATC. And where they were posted up, that was deep in ATC turf, right near one of their usual hangout houses. This was home base for them. Out of nowhere, a blue sedan slid up and stopped hard, way too close for comfort. The door flew open and a man jumped out. That man was later identified as Jose Reyes. No talking, no warning. He just started firing. Nelson took the first hits. 3 rounds tore into him, upper chest, right thigh, left forearm. He dropped instantly, hitting the ground right there on the block. Oscar tried to run for his life, pure panic in his legs, but he didn't make it far. He was hit 3 times too, twice in the lower left leg and once in the upper right leg. By some miracle, both Nelson and Oscar survived. Inika didn't get touched at all. A few days later, LAPD tracked Jose Reyes down and put him in cuffs. When they searched the place he was staying, they focused on the garage, and that's where everything started connecting. They found a silver handgun. Forensics tested it, and it came back solid. That was the exact gun used in the shooting. But the garage told more stories. Cops found small amounts of meth and cocaine, plus paperwork filled with gang-style writing. It pointed to a rival crew known as the Playboys and a street name tied to it, Lil Tech Nueve. They also found a California ID belonging to Reyes' live-in girlfriend, Monique Anzalone. Out in the alley, it got even louder. Fresh Playboys graffiti was sprayed on the wall, like somebody wanted the whole block to know who was behind it. Then came the cell phone. Police grabbed Reyes' phone and got a warrant to crack it open. What they found was wild. The phone's hotspot password, Playboys. That alone spoke volumes. About an hour after the shooting, a message went out from that phone saying, "Caught 2 virgins on PS." On the street, that kind of talk usually means a claim of bodies or hits. The photo gallery sealed the story. There were screenshots of a news article about the shooting, like he was proud of the damage. There were pictures of Reyes and Anzalone throwing up gang signs, and there were more photos of graffiti, big letters saying PBS and full tags reading Playboys 43L Tech. By the time detectives finished digging through everything, the story was clear. This wasn't random. This was gang-driven, claimed, documented, and broadcast straight from the shooter's own phone. By the time Jose Reyes' case hit the courtroom, one of the victims, Oscar, got on the stand and suddenly had no memory. No faces, no sounds, no details. He said he didn't remember the shooting and didn't remember telling police anything either, but officers weren't empty-handed. A cop who spoke to Oscar in the emergency room told the jury a completely different version. Right after the shooting, Oscar said a Hispanic man stepped out of a blue sedan, hit him with the classic hood question, and immediately opened fire on him and Belterton. Belterton never took the stand at all. But a detective explained what happened when he tried to show Belterton photo lineups in the hospital. Belterton refused to play ball. He straight up told the detective he was a gangster and that the street code wouldn't let him snitch on anyone. That silence wasn't confusion. It was loyalty to the rules of the block. Then the prosecution brought in their heavy hitter, gang expert officer, Luis Lopez. He broke down what the Playboys gang was really about. Not just graffiti and tough talk, but real business. Killings, robberies, drug and gun sales, assault rifles, break-ins, and vandalism. He also made it clear the ATC gang, which Oscar and Belton belonged to, was a direct enemy of the Playboys. Another officer backed that up. Officer Lopez also put the jury on game about the silence. He explained that everyone in that world lives by one rule. If someone talks to cops, violence comes next. That threat doesn't come from outsiders. It comes from inside the gang itself. It's a survival code. When the spotlight hit Jose Reyes, Officer Lopez told the jury Reyes was a confirmed Playboys member who went by the name Lil Tech. He based that on what was pulled from Reyes' home and phone. Inside that phone were photos of Reyes throwing up Playboys hand signs. In one of them, he was wearing a Pittsburgh Pirates hat, which the gang was known to associate with their identity. There was also a key text message Reyes sent, talking about catching 2 virgins on peas. According to the officer, peas was how the Playboys claimed their work. The word virgins could mean rival gang members from the villain's crew or newer, younger members in the street world. They also found a screenshot of a news article about the shooting on Reyes' phone. Officer Lopez told the jury that keeping crime articles is like keeping trophies in gang culture, proof that the work really happened. Then came another name, Anzalone. Officer Lopez told the court that, in his view, she was also a Playboys member, known as Giggles. He said that because photos pulled from Reyes' phone showed her throwing up the same gang hand signs. Next, the prosecution laid out a scenario that matched the case exactly. A male Playboys member riding passenger, a female Playboys member driving. They leave their own territory and roll straight into rival ATC turf. They stop at a well-known hangout spot. The young male steps out holding a chrome semi-automatic pistol. He approaches 2 rival gang members and another person standing with them. He hits them with a territory challenge and immediately opens fire. After the shooting, the shooter sends a message claiming credit for what just happened, saying he caught 2 virgins for the Playboys. The next day, he saves a news article about the shooting like a badge of honor. Officer Lopez had no hesitation. In his expert opinion, that kind of shooting is done for the benefit of the gang and with the gang. But the defense brought their own expert, Martin Flores, to poke holes in that theory. Flores told the jury that just because a gang member shoots someone doesn't automatically make it a gang-motivated crime. He said it depends on the full picture. In this situation, he didn't believe it was done to benefit the Playboys. His reasons were simple. No gang name was shouted, no gang signs were flashed during the act, and the shooter wasn't officially documented in law enforcement records as a confirmed gang member. He also felt the photos found on the phone were personal, not public. To him, they weren't gang propaganda, just private keepsakes. In the end, the courtroom was left balancing 2 worlds, the street logic of silence and reputation, and the courtroom logic of proof and technicalities. By the time Jose Reyes sat in that witness chair, he told the jury he was in a real relationship with Anzalone, said he loved her, said they'd been living together for about 4 months, starting in January 2016. But that home life wasn't clean or calm. He admitted they were deep into drugs together, marijuana, cocaine, and crystal meth, living fast and reckless. Then he painted the moment that flipped everything for him. In March 2016, he said Anzalone's car got sprayed with bullets in the alley behind their place. He wasn't guessing. He said he watched it happen through a live security camera feed. A white van rolled through the alley, and right after it passed, the shots rang out. When he ran outside, he saw the back window of her car blown out with bullet holes. He also said he saw a man jump into the white van and take off. That scene stayed stuck in his head. A month later, on April 1st, 2016, Reyes said he and Anzalone were riding around. He was sitting in the passenger seat, and he had a loaded gun on him. He spotted a white van that looked just like the one from the alley. Nearby were 2 young guys. In his mind, those were the same dudes who had shot up Anzalone's car. He saw them as gang members, enemies, threats. He got out of the car and opened fire. He told the court he didn't want to kill them. He just wanted them off him. He admitted he was high and angry, moving off emotion instead of logic. When prosecutors started pressing him, Reyes tried to distance himself from the gang life. He denied being part of any gang. He said the gang papers found in the garage weren't his and blamed them on Anzalone. When they showed him photos from his own phone of him throwing up Playboy's hand signs, he said he was just pretending, playing a role to impress her. Then they brought up the text message about catching 2 virgins. Reyes admitted he sent it, said it was to a friend, but refused to say who. He also claimed he didn't remember what he meant when he typed it. But he couldn't dodge everything. He admitted he crossed out 18th Street graffiti in the alley and replaced it with Playboys. When asked why, he said it was just the first thing that came to his mind. Then they showed him the tag Lil Tech written next to it. He admitted he wrote that too, and when asked if that was his name in the streets, he basically owned it. In the end, the jury didn't buy the innocent act. They found Reyes guilty of trying to kill both Belton and Oscar. They agreed it wasn't random. It was planned. They agreed it was tied to gang activity, done to benefit and promote gang business. And they agreed Reyes personally pulled the trigger. But the jury drew a line. For the third-person trap, they found him not guilty. No attempted murder, no attempted manslaughter. He walked on that count. Then came the sentence. The judge handed Reyes 25 years to life for the attempted murder of Belton, another 25 years to life for the attempted murder of Oscar, but both sentences were ordered to run at the same time, not back to back.